There's been little Apple news this weekend beyond the bigger Apple Watch, which is the news that I broke last week. What there is, however, is controversy about what it is, why it is, and how much it will be. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell. But before we get to our Apple Watch news, last week we talked about Max Tech and how they were testing the MacBook Pro 13-inch with M2 and their video on the problems with it, and they've sent us a message with their reasoning, and I quote, "Hi, Vadim from Max Tech here, responding to the whole pre-planned M2 MacBook Pro problems video. Here's the explanation. Before every major Apple release, we create a Google Drive document where we brainstorm a bunch of video ideas that we can do on each product, as well as a look back at prior video ideas to see what did well. If they performed well, we repeat them. We've created top problems videos for every big Mac, iPad Pro release in the past couple of years. Yes, that includes the M1 Macs, the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros, the 24-inch iMac, and the M1 iPad Pro, and more. They perform great with long-term video views, and we've actually had a lot of positive feedback because it helps potential buyers make a better purchasing decision based on the findings and recommendations. That's why I said we'd pre-planned a video for this, since we do that with every single release with success, with positive feedback. People who are covering this are making it seem like I'm biased against Apple and the M2 MacBook Pro and just want to make it look bad. No, we make this video for every Mac, even the Apple Silicon models, and we've been pushing them more than any other tech channel on YouTube. Now, as I've said right from the start, these guys do a really good job on the deep testing. Basically, all YouTubers are battling to bring eyes to their channel. I fully see why they framed things the way that they did, and why it became controversial when it emerged that they had planned a problems with video before the device even landed. Now, I'm not going to pass any judgment here on what they did and whether it's good or bad. I will leave that to you guys in the comments, but I am really interested in what you think. But what I would like to know is, what would you want in testing videos for the new devices, as obviously the MacBook Air arrives this Friday. So, back to the main show. So I broke the news on YouTube that Apple is bringing the 1.99-inch watch size from this year, and that came straight from Ross Young. And since then, it has been a huge topic all weekend. It's been on all the podcasts, it's been on all of the news sites, and everyone is talking about it. Now, Mark Gurman on the Power On newsletter said that it's going to be the Apple Watch Pro, potentially. Others have speculated that this is the rugged watch for extreme athletes, and the world has basically come to Twitter to say that extreme athletes don't care unless the battery lasts for weeks. Now, I think they could all be wrong, and let's talk about why. Now, I speculated last year that Apple could go to having the Apple Watch and the Apple Watch Pro, so basically replacing the Edition lineup with a Pro lineup. And I think this might be what's happening. So they could even put the naming in line with the iPhones, so you could have Apple Watch Max for the smaller and the larger sizes, and then Apple Watch Pro, Apple Watch Pro Max for the premium version with the different materials. I think what's happening, though, is what we've seen happen before. This is the year of Apple Watch 8, remember. Remember what happened when Apple announced the iPhone 8?
We do have one more thing.
They also announced a huge leap in the iPhone with the iPhone X. The first iPhone without a home button, brought Face ID and true depth front cameras, complete redesign, full screen. What if this is the Apple Watch 10? It would make sense. If we get flat sides, it's the first real visual overhaul of what the Apple Watch should look like since it was first introduced. Perhaps two with a flat display and new strap styles maybe, because if we're going much bigger than we've gone so far, those current attachments might be too small. Maybe we need a larger size that's still backwards compatible on the smaller sizes that they make. Also, new materials have been bounced around for this, so it's not probably going to come in aluminium, but stainless steel or titanium, or something completely different. And it's also been announced that it will probably have a much higher price point, around about $1,000.
It'll be priced from $999.
That was the price that the first iPhone X came out at as well, and it blew everyone's minds because it was a $1,000 phone. Nobody was really doing $1,000 phones at the point. But there's a potential that this is what's happening with the watch. This could be the Watch 10, and we get the new design language, and over the years they will then filter down to the other watch sizes, as it did with the iPhone X, leading to the XR and the XS. And then the 11 brought the base models back to mainstream pricing, and introduce the Pro lineup with those OLED displays to differentiate. So could we see a couple of years of a higher priced Pro watch, and then this design language filters down to the rest of the watches as time goes on? I think that's a decent potential, and I think it might make sense. This, however, is all based on theories. This is based on what Apple has done in the past, and it could well start in a single size, just like the iPhone X did too. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments, where you can also ask questions like these fine people did. Marcin Kowalczyk asks, iCave answers, iCave Dave, will you try the lockdown mode in the beta just to see how restrictive it is? I will give it a go, but I am waiting for the public betas. Just bear that in mind. I'm not looking to go straight in with the developer betas. That is just a recipe for disaster when I'm using this Mac, which is my only Mac right now, as my production machine. So that's not going to happen, but we will try it out once we get public betas, which I think may well be this week, could even be today. If you're not sure what the lockdown mode is, it is the super secure mode. We talked about it on last week's show, and it basically disables pretty much anything that could threaten your phone in terms of message attachments, in terms of wired connections while the device is locked. It reduces the amount of technologies you can use in Safari, so it will break a lot of websites. They won't look right. Even apple.com doesn't load properly. So bear in mind, this is not for everyone, but it is if you are under attack. For example, if you have a corporate espionage attempt going on, you might find this out from your boss, and all you need to do is go into that lockdown mode, restart your phone, and it will at least protect a lot more against different vulnerabilities. This is more likely, though, for journalists and government politicians and that kind of thing who really need the security and need to not be attacked. And Joe asks, iCave answers, if you were to use one of these Apple products daily, which would you pick? iPhone SE3, M2 MacBook Pro, or the Apple Studio display? Arguably the most controversial Apple products this year. I feel like I've answered this question before. If I did it in last week's show, apologies, but it was in today's show notes, so I'm going to do it anyway. And given the choice of all of those, it's a difficult one, because I could go M2 MacBook Pro, which is what I would use to do the show. It's not a bad product at all by any means. It's just doesn't really make sense that people would choose that over the new MacBook Air. The iPhone SE3 would probably be the most productive thing that I could use, because I can still use it to film this show on a pretty decent camera. I can edit the show using the iPhone if needs be, and send it all up, and I definitely need a phone of some sort. Apple Studio display on its own, tricky one. I think the difficulty here is, which one do I have to pay for? Best value out of the lineup? iPhone SE3, hands down. And John Malkin asks, iCave answers, now that the M2 MacBook Air is cooked, when will the M3 MacBook Air be oven ready? I'm planning to buy in the spring. I think if you plan to buy in the spring, my friend, I think you are going to be disappointed. I don't see that we're going to get it that soon. I think the very, very soonest we could see it would be the next WWDC, and that is if Apple has managed to get onto their annual cadence. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now which might make this very difficult, and that is things like the issues between China and Taiwan. We might be touching on that a little bit more tomorrow. I just want to make sure that I've got my research in place and things, but difficulties with supply chains at the moment. When people talk about chip shortage, we are not talking in any terms about things like M1 or A series chips. We're not talking about any of Apple's kind of core chips. What we're talking about is the lower end stuff, which is used for controllers on boards. It might be, production capacity on things like displays. I don't think that any of Apple's stuff really has been delayed by chip shortages in terms of those main chips, but it's those other little bits like potentially Qualcomm stuff. That's where we might be seeing some delays. But yeah, I don't think we're going to be seeing it in the next spring. I think we're probably more likely to be looking at next summer at the earliest. That's when I would hope we'll see it, because that means that I'm right about the annual upgrade cycle, which makes all the sense in the world, because they're already making the annual upgrades for the A-series chips. But I think Apple is now starting to fill out their range, with the M1s staying around in the MacBook Airs. Would not be surprised if we see an M1 Mac Mini stay around as well when the M2 Mac Minis arrive, but I would expect to see that with a slight price cut, but we will see. Anyway, thank you so much for watching today, guys. If you've got any questions for me for a future show, hashtag iCaveAnswers down in the comment section, and we'll answer them then. Until then, see you next time. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell.